What's up, guys? It's the Basketball Doctors here. Today we have a special Q&A. It's all ACL related questions that we received in the comments. We chose the top 3 and we're going to go over them. My name once again is Dr. Marco Lopez, and this is
Dr. Gabe Ignacio. We're both doctors of physical therapy and co-founders of the Basketball Doctors. And exactly what Marco mentioned, we're going to focus this Q&A specifically on some common questions and themes that we got regarding ACL, and pretty much just get into it. Before we get into it, please like, comment, subscribe, share with family and friends if this is a topic that you're interested in. And if you have any questions related to ACL before we even start, go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and we'll pick the same common themes and questions and we'll answer them in our next Q&A. So the first question is from Isaiah Diaz 1754. His question is, can you return to sport following a full ACL rupture? Marco, take it away.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it all depends. I'm thinking he's phrasing it in a way that's non-operational, but I'll kind of answer it both ways. So obviously operational, the whole goal of the surgery is for you to return back to your activities, your sport. So 100% you could get back to sport. There is a stat where it shows it's 20 and 30% people go back to really competitive sports at their level. And the important thing there is making sure you have the right rehab plan and making sure you're at the right steps, taking good care of as you're going back to sport. But having the surgery is a no-brainer, and that's our goal when we work with every athlete to get back to sport. If you don't have surgery, that's a little iffy. First, we got to figure out if you have instability, because when we have the ACL, that ACL provides stability to the knee. So if we have instability in our knee and we try to run and cut and my knee gives out, it's gonna be kind of hard to go back to sport. But there's a lot of copers. So there's a non-coper and a coper. The coper are the people that, they strengthen and then run and cut and do all these stuff, and they're able to do all their activities without their knee giving out. So those can go back to sport because they're not having those instability mechanisms. Because if you have the instability, you could try to go back to sport, but your knee's gonna keep giving out on you. So to kind of summarize the answer with the surgery, the whole goal, or after any ACL tear, the goal is to regain as much stability as you can, because having instability is going to really interfere with your activities. So with the surgery, the whole goal is to get back to sport. Without the surgery, if you don't have any instability, then you have a good chance of getting back to full sport. But if you do have instability, it's very hard. Or what do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I think Marco kind of covered all the points, so I'll just trying to go a little bit more in detail with what he said and try and maybe clarify a little bit. So yeah, I think if someone decides to have ACL reconstruction, the likelihood of their goal, if they had the reconstruction, is to get back to their prior level of function, which is most likely sport. But yeah, unfortunately, research has shown that only 20-30% of people actually return to their sport at what their previous level was or higher. So for example, if I'm a collegiate or professional basketball player and I had the surgery, people at my level, only 20-30% of them after the surgery actually get back to playing at that level. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a lot of factors that go into it that don't allow people to get back to their previous level of function. And it's just part of the injury, part of the sport. And then in terms of non-operational, me and Marco know people who don't have ACLs, and by research they call them copers versus non-copers, and that's what Marco was talking about, if you have instability or not. But we have colleagues that have no ACL and are playing recreational sports. We have people that are playing basketball, soccer, they still cut and stuff like that, but they also have swelling, some knee pain every once in a while, but they also do a lot of strength and rehab. They'll allow them to play because they don't want to have surgery and go through the 9 to 12 months long of getting back to that, because they have lives, they have work, they have kids, they have responsibilities. So yeah, it all depends on your goals and where you're at with life, type of thing. But yeah, the goal is always to get you back to your previous level of function.
No, yeah, Gabe hit it on the nail towards the end. There is also, if you don't have instability, there might be, some swelling, might be some pain. But the main thing too is one thing that I forgot to add in is the level of competitiveness. If you want to just go play pickup, you'll be fine without an ACL most of the time. You could just be a spot up shooter and just keep it low key. But if you want to be that dynamic athlete, you might need to have that surgery, because it's just going to help you provide that stability. So it's kind of give or take depending on your level and how competitive you want to get back to sport.
Correct. And to kind of preface that a little bit, regardless if you have surgery or not, there is some risk factors that you should know. Is that one, you're already at risk for early osteoarthritis, whether you have surgery or not. Two, if you don't have the surgery, you're more at risk of other injuries like meniscus, cartilage issues, MCL, LCL, sprains, just because the ACL provides a lot of stability for hyperextension of the knee, rotation, and movement side to side. But you don't have that extra passive stability. One, you need to compensate by being really strong, or two, you compromise the other passive structures, which is meniscus, cartilage, ligaments, and things like that.
Yeah, it's just too loose, and when it's too loose, the knee's going to be moving around too much. And that's why the stability is the most important. That was a good first question. All right, number 2, we have by YH8376. How do I know when my knee extension is good? I could extend my knee while standing, but it's harder to do it laying down. And also I wear a knee brace that's locked on 0 degrees. 15 days post-op ACL surgery, by the way. All right, Gabe, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of go over as overview. Marco, just feel free to add in when you feel like you want to, but just generally being 15 days out, we're very big on getting extension first. Obviously flexion you don't want to ignore, but if you're going to bias on working more one than the other, you want to work on full extension right away, because it's going to help with a lot of different things that Marco you could get into a little bit. But to answer his question, like how do you know what extension is good enough? First goal is to get completely straight, so 0. If like you were put a line, that's 0, you want that first goal. The ultimate goal is to be equivalent to your opposite leg or get some hyperextension. So typically most people have like a little bit of hyperextension. If you don't and 0 is your normal, then 0 is the ultimate goal. But if you have a little bit of hyperextension, that's when we feel like that is when you meet your ultimate goal of being equivalent to your other side.
No, for sure. I mean, Gabe said that the main thing is a lot of people focus on bending the knee, like, hey, how much they want to show off how much they bend, but you got to focus on getting that knee straight. And the other thing too is, this is like a little plug for our video, but we made a great video on ACL on how to measure your knee extension and how to find out if it's more muscular or, joint limitations. But check out, we'll link the video in our description below. We got a lot of videos on how to see if your knee is fully straight, and how you can test it yourself and ways to improve it. But like Gabe mentioned, you want that hyperextension because if you are walking, you go into some slight hyperextension. And when you're walking, you're going to feel if the knee's not hyperextended or at 0, you're going to be walking with a slight limp. It might not be noticeable to the normal eye, but to the trained, you're going to see, oh, his knee is slightly bent. And when we're walking with the knee slightly bent, then it just affects everything. We have kneecap pain and everything. But the biggest thing is getting that knee straight, like Gabe said, making sure you want to compare it to the other side. I mean, 15 days post-op is still pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, to get to straight, obviously, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I think you asked something else about like knee full extension and standing versus.
Yeah, so he said it's harder to do it laying down.
This can be different from person to person. We've seen both. We've seen people where laying down, it's easier for them to get full extension. And then when they stand, it's harder than to get that full extension. And then for his case, it's harder for him to get it in laying down versus standing. So there's a couple of different factors that you have to consider here. So for him, we'll go for his specific case. It's harder for him to get that extension laying down. It could be from like muscle guarding, it could be from pain. It could be that he just keeps turning on his hamstring and not able to relax. So when you're laying down, you have gravity helping you, you have no weight on your legs. So it's typically more of like a muscle relaxation or a hamstring guarding issue, or it could be a capsular issue. But the fact that he can get it standing at full extension, we're thinking that it's probably not capsular, it's most likely like muscle guarding. Versus like when he's standing, you have the proprioception from the ground, you have your weight so that he's able to access his quad a little bit better, so that when he's standing, he can get that full extension. He's not getting so much co-contraction from his hamstrings so that he can sit in that full extension. Or it could be one of the ones where his quad is really weak, that he sits into his joint into hyperextension, so that that's kind of more of like his quad isn't turning on, so his body is sitting into extension. So there's a lot of factors to consider here. But for his specific case, that's kind of what we're thinking. For the opposite case, what would you think, Marco?
Yeah, Gabe said it right. I'm thinking when you're laying down, leg is let out. It's actually the opposite. Normally all the time I see people when in the ground on the table, they're fine. You go standing up, everything changes. They don't have the good strength there in their quad, and they're just not able to get that knee straight, or they get scared. They're like, oh, I'm going to go into hyperextension too much. But when your leg's propped up, I'm thinking guarding. Like, that's kind of the main, especially if you ever do it just standing up. But if it's the opposite, like I mentioned, there's so many things. One, fearful. Once when you're standing, you're like, oh, my knee's going to go into hyperextend. It's in a buckle. That's in one. And another thing is quad strength. Laying down, you don't need as much quad strength to get your knee straight. You have gravity assisting you. When you're standing, you got to squeeze that quad. And the other one too is when you're standing, you got to not only put weight on both sides. Some people try to offload it, put more weight on the left side to try to cheat that standing portion. So there's a lot of factors when the foot hits the ground. But yeah, it's normally the opposite that I see all the time, but consider yourself lucky. So it's easier. I'd rather have you lacking knee extension on the table than you lacking knee extension on the standing walking.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely way more common, the opposite of his, where that's what we see way more in the clinic, but it can happen the other way.
But he's doing great at 15 days. Check out our videos though to keep maintaining your knee straight. We have a great list of videos for getting your knee straight.
Sweet. So getting to the last question here, it's from Andrew at DJ Michael 9616. That's kind of a long question, but we'll try and summarize a little bit. So he said it's been about 4 years now since he suffered a stretch on his ACL graft, and he's still doing rehab, which is great. He's come a long way, and he asked, how useful are the ATG exercises such as the Poliquin step downs, VMO squats, ATG split squats, and sledge? The issue is time and fatigue. Only so much time and energy I can give in a session. Can't do every exercise out there. And that's such a common question, a common theme, especially when you're in like late stage rehab. But Marco, you can point this first.
I mean, I'm not sure if he had surgery. Did he say surgery?
Yeah, he said.
Oh yeah, he did have surgery, and then he had a stretch, which I think is a sprain. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm hoping that's what it means. And when you just sprain it, it's just like stretching of the ligaments slight. But the big thing is, like, it's a loaded question, but it all comes down to when you're dealing with at this stage, you want to have like a specific game plan tailored to you. All those exercises are great. They're good at, I have nothing against them. A lot of exercises are great, but are they great for you at a specific time and place? For him, I would first find out like what's his limitations right now. Does he have good enough quad strength? Does he have good hamstring strength? Does he have good co-contraction? Does he have good calf strength? So it's coming up with a specific plan. That way we target. If not, I'm just throwing like darts out there. I'm throwing anything and it's like, oh, whatever hits, I think it's gonna help. That's why I usually tell people when we're working with athletes online, we first find out what their movement faults are, what their goals are, and then create a game plan. And I usually come up with like the most bang for your buck exercises. Okay, we know that, let's say, we need to work on your quad strength, but we also need to work on your ankle mobility. So let's work on some exercises that do both. Or we need to work on your stability, but also your mobility. So let's superset it, but let's try to make it as time efficient for you and very tailored, specific to you. That way that whatever you're working on is specific towards your needs too. But that's kind of like my answer. What do you think, Gabe? It's very tricky.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with the question because it is a very good question, and it is an issue that we see with people that are in their late stage rehab or like even like early to mid stage. It's like there's so many things to do. How do you get through everything? And it's just like, it's a common theme. It's like, I don't have time for this. I can't do that. So first answer, like the type of exercise that he was doing. So those are very much like knees over toes and extreme end ranges of knee flexion. Yeah, those are great exercises that I feel like you need to do as an athlete. Do you need to do all 4 of them? Likely not. You could pick ones that you feel like meet your specific needs or you feel like you get the most out of them. Because there are other aspects of rehab that you need to be doing. And what Marco mentioned was exactly what I would say. It's like, it comes down to programming, right? It's like, what are your needs? What are your impairments? And how can we fit it into your daily, weekly, monthly, and overall plan? Because it can be, there's so much stuff out there nowadays. It's like, oh, this looks cool, let me try that. Oh, this looks cool, let me try that. then next thing you know, you're working out for 2 hours and you're like, I can't do this all the time. Yeah. So those exercises are great for what they need to target. I would say maybe fitting like 1 or 2 of those exercises in your weekly plan, maybe doing, like saying you're doing a leg workout 3 days a week. Maybe you pick one for each day. That's going to be your quad focus and range focus, trying to build knee resilience into your cartilage, ligaments, and muscles at those extreme ranges, which is what you need if you're an athlete. But then you got to make sure you're focusing on everything else, making your stability, your plyometric training, your deceleration, like whatever movement training, plus all your strength. So like we said, it's a lot to unpack, but at the end of the day, our take-home message is, what does your program come down to? It's all about programming. There's no bad exercises. It's bad exercise prescription and programming.
Yeah, exactly. It's like medication. You want to get the right dosage and the right medicine for you, but it all comes down to programming. And that's a segue. If you guys want to work with us online or in person, we're located in Southern California. Also online, we're taking new clients. Send us an email and we'll create a tailored program through our exercising program. We have monthly models, great to kind of keep you on pace, to keep you on track with your injuries and help you play basketball pain-free. That's a quick segue.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And kind of what Marco mentioned before, we'll put our playlists and videos that we feel like are relevant to this Q&A in the description below. Like we mentioned before, we just want to help as many people as we can, get more hoopers hooping, keep them pain-free. And like always,
it's ball for life.
It's ball for life.